It's January 23rd here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with the stories making the headlines at this hour. Starting with the first Quad foreign ministers meeting since the launch of the Trump administration. The statement, signed by top diplomats of the U.S., India, Japan, and Australia, left out their long-standing usual commitment to the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, a possible alarm for South Korea, as the omission came after U.S. President Donald Trump called North Korea a nuclear power. President Yoon will attend his own impeachment trial hearing for the second time on Thursday afternoon, where he's expected to run into the ex-defense minister Kim Yong-hyun, this time as a witness for the first time since Kim was arrested by the prosecutors less than a week after the martial law order. The South Korean economy expanded 2% in 2024, the Bank of Korea says. The weaker-than-expected growth mirrored sluggish export growth, poor domestic demand, and the ongoing political crisis from the martial law order. The first Quad foreign ministers meeting since the launch of the new Donald Trump administration has taken place. But their joint statement left out any reference to the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and included nothing about North Korea issues. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
The top diplomats of the United States, Australia, India, and Japan met in Washington for their first Quad foreign ministers meeting since the launch of the Donald Trump administration earlier this week. This meant that U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who was the first to be confirmed in Trump's new cabinet, was taking part in the meeting for the first time. However, the joint statement issued by the foreign ministers of the Quad nations saw the removal of any reference to the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Instead, the top diplomats vowed to strengthen a free and open Indo-Pacific while opposing any unilateral actions that seek to change the status quo by force or coercion. It also did not mention China or North Korea by name. The latest joint statement is in stark contrast to the previous years, where the foreign ministers reaffirmed their commitment to the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. The difference in the joint statement also comes as Trump and his defense chief nominee, Peter Hegseth, used the term nuclear power to describe North Korea. And according to a prominent U.S. expert and former officer at the U.S. National Intelligence Council, Sidney Saylor, the new U.S. administration believes Pyongyang's nuclear threat has evolved over the last 4 years, given the use of a term that was largely avoided by U.S. officials in the past. Saylor says the Trump administration faced the reality that the regime continues to grow its arsenal qualitatively and quantitatively, and the threat is greater than 4 years ago. He added that the remarks are a realistic view of the threat. While the term nuclear power is different from nuclear weapons state, a term used to describe countries like the U.S., Russia, and the U.K., it raises concerns for South Korea, which seeks close policy coordination with Washington to achieve denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
U.S. President Donald Trump said he will impose new tariffs against Russia if a deal to end its war in Ukraine is not made. Taking to his social media platform Truth Social on Wednesday, Trump said that he would have no choice but to put high levels of taxes, tariffs, and sanctions against Russia if Russian President Vladimir Putin refuses to negotiate to end the prolonged war. Trump added that such tariffs would be applied to other participating countries as well. However, the newly inaugurated U.S. leader did not elaborate on which countries he was referring to. President Yoon will be attending his impeachment trial hearing for the second time. The series of witness testimonies will begin as the Constitutional Court continues to hear and deliberate on whether Yoon's martial law order last month calls for his removal from office. For more, we have our Oh Soo-young standing by at the Constitutional Court. Hello there, Soo-young.
Good morning, Tami.
So from today, justices will begin hearing testimonies from key witnesses, beginning with former Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun. Is that so?
That's right. From 2:30 p.m. here at the Constitutional Court, the former Defense Minister will testify as one of the the first of 8 witnesses approved by the court so far. Now, the National Assembly side and President Yoon's side will both have the opportunity to question him. Now, Kim Yong-hyun is one of the key figures implicated in planning and executing the martial law on December 3rd. And while he was described as Yoon's right-hand man and said that he would take responsibility for the chaos that ensued after the martial law was declared, there have lately been discrepancies with President Yoon's narrative on key matters under review by the court. So his testimony and interaction with Yoon may be quite interesting to watch today. But President Yoon and Kim, they might not confront each other directly during the 4th hearing. At the previous hearing, the National Assembly requested measures such as installing a screen or temporarily excusing President Yoon from the courtroom to ensure that witnesses could testify without intimidation.
Then, Soo-young, what would be the biggest questions posed to Kim Yong-hyun?
Well, the questions are highly likely to focus on 2 aspects. First of all, the martial law proclamation that was released on December 3rd. That included various decrees such as banning all political activities, and that ban on political activities was set out by the National Assembly side as one of the main grounds for impeaching President Yoon. And of course, President Yoon's side says that the martial law decree, it wasn't produced by Yoon, but, quote, mistakenly copied by the defense minister, the former defense minister rather. Kim's legal team, meanwhile, says that the former minister drafted the initial version, but it was, quote, of course, reviewed by the president. So justices they're likely to review that and also likely to focus on a note that the finance minister received, instructing him to draft a budget for an emergency legislative body to presumably replace the elected parliament after shutting it down under martial law. Now, Yoon on Tuesday claimed that he did not write the note and says he thinks it was written by the defense minister. So the justices will take these accounts into their deliberation when deciding whether Yoon's martial law was unconstitutional.
Definitely. But while refusing to cooperate with investigators who arrested him for questioning, the president seems pretty determined to attend the impeachment trial himself, doesn't it?
Yes, that's right, Tammy. Yoon's legal team, they've said that the president, if possible, will attend all future hearings, which have been scheduled until February 13th. And so far, the president has filed without success appeals against his arrest, and major figures implicated in the suspected insurrection have also been arrested. So he is looking rather cornered here when it comes to the criminal investigation against him. By attending future hearings at the Constitutional Court, President Yoon could emphasize his own narrative and might even directly question witnesses if necessary. Also, he may be more determined to appear at the court as a means of further rallying his supporters, emboldened by the latest polls, which show growing numbers back the ruling party and his non-impeachment.
Indeed. All right, Soo-young, thanks so much for the coverage. Do keep us updated throughout the day. So what's drawing attention to today's hearing is the ex-defense minister's attendance as a witness and his first face-to-face with President Yoon since the martial law declaration on December 3rd. Let's discuss more with Professor Baek-eun-seok this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
So we'll be seeing 2 key figures in the same room later today. How do you expect the atmosphere to be?
Well, President Yoon and the former Defense Secretary Kim are the 2 men at the very center of the martial law debacle. They were one team in planning and implementing the failed martial law, as you know. And today will be the first time the 2 meet face-to-face since the insurrection investigation began. This time, Yoon is the respondent in his impeachment trial, and Kim is the first witness called in by Yoon's legal team. What is to note, in my view, is that on key issues, such as what role Yoon played in respect of the martial law decree number 1 that prohibited all political activities, etc., some of the statements Kim made during his criminal investigation and Yoon's own statements are not in agreement. They are inconsistent. So we will see whether Kim will testify to the effect that Yoon was the mastermind behind the decree with intent to carry it out, thereby sort of distancing himself from the president, or he will change his previous statements and place him in line with Yoon, showing loyalty to the president. Since Kim is Yoon's witness, he will be first examined by the president's legal team. And I gather President Yoon himself may examine Kim during this time. There's a possibility of that before the cross-examination by the National Assembly's legal team.
It will be quite an interesting scene to follow later today. Kim Yong-hyun made a statement that he broke the laptop that wrote the decree number 1 announced at the time of the martial law order, adding that he broke it because he accomplished a mission. How will such a statement affect the impeachment hearing and the trial itself?
Well, one key issue in the impeachment trial is what exact role President Yoon played regarding the decree. President Yoon has so far maintained that Kim was chiefly responsible for drafting the decree, with Yoon only approving it, and no execution of the decree was actually intended. Kim's notebook, computer, mobile phone, and other files and documents are in that sense, critically important pieces of evidence in establishing the full facts. Now that the key evidence has been destroyed, it'll be much harder to establish what actually happened and how responsible President Yoon was in that regard. And in this sense, this may cause the trial to take longer, I suppose.
Well, we should also talk about the memo about allocating funds for establishing an emergency legislative body that President Yoon allegedly passed to the current acting president, Choi Sang-mok, while Yoon continues to deny all the allegations. Let's talk about that.
Right. The note ultimately handed over to the Minister of Economy and Finance, now the acting president, Choi. The note was about securing the funding for the so-called emergency legislative body. Yoon has denied his knowledge of the note, let alone his involvement in the making of it altogether. On Tuesday, upon being asked by the acting Chief Justice Min about the note, President Yoon stated he first heard about it through the media, and something like that could only be written by the Minister of Defense, that is Kim. If the note was indeed made by Yoon in an attempt to bypass the National Assembly, which is the legitimate legislature under the Constitution, this could be crucial in making out the case against President Yoon for impeachment. So we will have to see what Kim's stance today is, taking the responsibility himself, or basically pointing the finger, so to speak, at President Yoon.
Well, Professor Baek, we will be seeing President Yoon for the second time at the hearing later today. Now, he showed a rather modest and confident attitude at the third hearing of his impeachment trial back on Tuesday. Right. Do you think he'll also present himself the same way today as well? I mean, why has he been using these gestures and tone?
It's not easy to figure that out, what's going on with him, but maybe it is part of his two-track strategy. So on the one hand, not cooperating with or even resisting the criminal investigation by CIO or the police, but participating in the impeachment trial and taking advantage of opportunities to assert his version of what happened while be communicating to his supporters at the same time. His legal team indicated that President Yoon will be present in all the scheduled hearings, so we hope he remains that way.
Well, today's hearing is the fourth of its kind. The last and eighth hearing will take place on February 13th next month. How likely is it that there'll be additional hearings, if there are any additional ones, for what reasons?
Well, I think initially 5 hearings were scheduled, as you know, and all these 5 scheduled hearings were taking place in the afternoon only. And then 3 more hearings have been added by the Constitutional Court with a list of witnesses to be examined. But for these 3 additional hearings, the court announced hearings will begin in the morning and last all day. So it is clear that the court wants to move forward without delay, given the gravity of what is at stake in the impeachment trial against a sitting president. But in the course of the scheduled hearings, there may arise a need for additional hearings. The Constitutional Court held 17 hearings in the impeachment trial of President Park Geun-hye. I don't think this time it will be that many, as the issues are much more straightforward than the case against the Park. I think it would be in the best interest of the whole nation for this trial to be brought to a finality fairly but swiftly, which was what the acting Chief Justice Min said right from the very outset. And so we hope the proceedings stay that way.
Well, we are halfway there. We'll see how the second half unfolds. Professor Baek, thank you so much for taking your time to be connecting with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So President Yoon's appearance at the hearing today will mark his third trip out of the Seoul Detention Center, where he's currently being detained. We go live there with our Kim Jong-hyun standing by. Hello there, Jong-hyun.
Hi, Dami.
So Jong-hyun, all eyes are again on the detention center ahead of his travel to the Constitutional Court later this afternoon. How are things looking there this morning?
Well, Dami, behind me is the gate where President Yoon is currently detained, and to my right there had been less than a dozen supporters, around 8 people, holding up signs supporting, I think, President Yoon, and they earlier got into an argument and with people that are protesting against. They seem to be supporters of President Yoon for quite some time because they were coming up to us and asking us who we are, and they were also telling us their stories that they were here also yesterday. I also want to mention something that we're just learning, that the CIO may hand over President Yoon's case to the prosecution as early as today. A briefing is scheduled for 11 a.m., so we will have to bring you more updates in our later broadcast. This decision may have come as the CIO suffers from public backlash for their failed attempts to investigate President Yoon for the third time as of yesterday. Well, legal basis had been we see that people are screaming just there. A legal basis had been that the CIO lacks authority to investigate the president, or that it cannot investigate charges of insurrection. This follows attempts to search presidential residence, and the office for evidence, which were blocked by the presidential office. Now, take a listen to CIO Chief Oh Dong-woon, who spoke to reporters yesterday.
I believe the presidential office also needs to respect the decisions of the judiciary. The CIA will thoroughly investigate anyone involved in the emergency martial law incidents, regardless of their position or rank.
Now, with no success in their attempts to question Yoon or search the presidential office and residence, it's possible the CIO may be handing over the investigation for a swift transition and to avoid more criticism.
Right, it's been such a headache for investigators to question and bring Yoon out of the detention center by force. That's why they are handing over the questioning part to the prosecution. Now, that's all because they are also almost running out of time, right?
Yes. At this time, it's unclear whether the CIO will attempt another search because there is a briefing scheduled for 11 a.m. And also, it announces that the deadline for the CIO to hold the case was until next Tuesday, as you mentioned. So that was the deadline. But if the decision comes this 11, it came a lot sooner, given that the CIO is under public scrutiny and is getting a lot of backlash for the investigation being in a stalemate situation. And the prosecution pledged for a swift investigation and even pledged for investigating President Yoon even during the Seollal holidays, where many eyes will be on this particular case.
Looks like it's going to be another busy day at the Seoul detention today. Now, Jong-hyun, walk us through the investigation into the recent unrest at the Seoul Western District Court. What's the latest?
Tammy, there has been a significant update on that front following the release of arrest warrant of President Yoon. At the weekend, protesters stormed into the Seoul Western District Court. I'm sure the video has been released of policemen being assaulted, and the police in total arrested 56 people for trespassing, assaulting police officers, or damaging the court property. Now, there were also incidents of individuals asserting journalistic crews or attempting to breach court security. Now, the authorities are taking swift action to prevent further disturbances. To my right, there are many policemen, 10 of them, and then there were also a 911 truck standing by in case of any potential clashes. Now, that's all I have for this hour, but we'll bring you more updates in our later broadcast.
Alrighty, thank you, Jung-seo, for the update. We will check in back with you later as the story develops. South Korea's economic growth in 2024 showed only a modest growth. That's according to data from the Bank of Korea released on Thursday, which showed that the country's GDP grew 2% on-year in 2024, lower than the central bank's November forecast of 2.2%. This comes as Korea's economy in the fourth quarter expanded only 0.1% on-quarter, which the central bank pointed to weaker consumer sentiment and a more sluggish construction sector due to the brief imposition of martial law on December 3rd. SK hynix, the world's second largest memory chip maker, has announced its highest ever revenue and operating profit for 2024, driven by the strong demand for high bandwidth memory. The company said Thursday that its revenue surpassed 66 trillion Korean won, or around $46 billion, marking a 102% increase compared to the previous year. Operating profit turned positive, soaring to just over $16 billion. And last year's fourth quarter also saw a record high operating profit of over $6 billion. Samsung Electronics' latest venture into integrating AI into smartphones promises smarter, faster, and more personalized experiences for consumers. Our Moon Hae-ryun has the details on its next generation Galaxy S25 series.
Imagine a phone that knows what you need before you do. That's what Samsung's latest smartphones promise to make a reality. At its Unpacked conference on Wednesday in San Jose, California, Samsung Electronics announced its latest flagship Galaxy smartphones, the Galaxy S25 series. The Galaxy S25, S25 Plus, and S25 Ultra are all equipped with new AI tools unseen in their predecessors, unveiled as the firm's first AI smartphones a year ago. The new models will hit the shelves on February 7th in the same price range as the S24. The new phones use Google's Gemini AI model alongside Samsung's in-house AI voice assistant Bixby and Qualcomm's Snapdragon 8 Elite chips for on-device processing, meaning that you don't have to be connected to the internet to be able to use AI functions. And these AI functions provide a key element in the S25 user experience: personalization.
With the S25, users can enjoy a seamless experience where the AI, agent and personalized AI features make life easier. Just say what you need, and the phone will recommend and handle it for you.
For example, Now Brief is a new service that provides a morning feed catering to your personal preferences based on user data, such as displaying your schedule for the day from your mobile calendar. Now Bar is something that leads on from the briefing, giving you timely updates throughout the day, such as giving you directions to your next meeting or giving you a breakdown of the latest sports games you've missed based on what teams you follow. And this is another reason why on-device processing is so crucial, because personal data used to tailor these functions will only be stored and processed on the phone. While the new AI features are the main focal point of the new phones, the hardware also boasts some upgrades. The new Ultra line has a 50-megapixel sensor on its ultra-wide rear camera, in contrast to the S24's 12-megapixel sensor for better quality images and videos, and also features a new, hardier screen. The series overall has rounded corners with a reduced bezel for bigger display, and there's an even thinner model to come called the Galaxy S25 Edge. This model was briefly previewed at the end of the Unpacked event, setting up competition in the skinny smartphone market, with Apple's ultra-thin model expected to come later this year. 문혜련, Arirang News.
Now, let's take a look at the stories from around the world with our Choi Ji-hee. Good morning, Ji-hee.
Good morning, Kami.
Why don't we begin in Germany, where 2 people were killed in a stabbing attack, and one of them was apparently a toddler. Do tell us more.
Right. Police arrested a 28-year-old Afghan man for stabbing a boy and a man to death in a park in the Bavarian city of Aschenburg on Wednesday. The suspect, previously known for violent behavior and detained a few times, assaulted the group of children with a kitchen knife, killing a 2-year-old boy and a 41-year-old man who was trying to protect the children. 2 others were seriously injured and moved to hospital for treatment. While authorities are investigating the motive of the attack, initial assessments suggest mental health issues. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz condemned the attack as an unbelievable act of terror and stressed the need for accountability regarding the suspect's residency status. Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian leader Vladimir Putin held a video meeting on Tuesday to reaffirm their strategic partnership following the inauguration of U.S. President Donald Trump. During the 1.5-hour discussion, the 2 leaders emphasized their commitment to a multipolar world order and expressed mutual support for each nation's core interests. Putin referred to Xi as a dear friend and stated that the Kremlin and Beijing are strengthening their ties based on friendship, mutual trust, and support, despite external pressures. Situations in the Middle East, South Korea, and Taiwan were also reportedly discussed. While President Trump was not directly mentioned, the timing suggests that Putin and Xi are preparing to build relations with the new U.S. administration. Trump earlier threatened tariffs on Beijing and warned of sanctions if Moscow does not end the war in Ukraine.
After the season's worst dust storm, the air quality has improved a bit today. However, it will stay bad throughout this morning with a ultra-fine dust advisory remaining in place, but more regions will see better air quality as the day goes on. But unfortunately, those of us in the capital area need to keep a face mask on will stay in the bad category all day today. Early spring-like warmth continues in most parts of Korea under sunny skies, and it's forecast to be even warmer tomorrow with an expected high of 9 degrees here in the capital. And this afternoon, Seoul gets up to 6 degrees, Daegu at 12. Mid-March-like temperatures in Busan at 14 degrees Celsius this afternoon. And those traveling on the road during the Seollal holiday need to keep the weather in mind. We have a wintry mix in the forecast early next week. Also, Monday's mix will bring an icy cold conditions to the country. Well, that's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That's all we have for this morning. Thanks for watching.